Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Signal, where we talk about what it takes to win in high stakes government regulated markets. So, the last few episodes, we've been talking about timing and how to get in projects at the right time to have the highest chance of success. But what if you're a subcontractor and the only way you can get into contracts is through a prime? It's not that easy, right? So, I thought I'd share my experience about running a flood mitigation company and find out how I actually solved for this by learning the hard way. So I hope you enjoy. And Hurricane Sandy brought massive devastation to the East Coast US that absolutely destroyed properties, shorelines, long-term infrastructure, even the Jersey Shore, like the things that people think of that region for. Now, if you can imagine being a business owner, property owner, real estate investor, or even a council person in that area, just think about how devastating that was to your community. You too would probably think of how we can prevent something like this in the future. And it causes change. It caused business owners, property investors, and local government bodies to think, what's going to happen next? What are they going to do as they're worried about their investment now and for the future? Now, every industry has a Hurricane Sandy. There are these massive events that cause a disruption in how they do business and make things change. Transit, infrastructure, public safety. It makes councils think, how can we de-risk Sandy type problems? And they do this through procurement. They do this through a formal RFP process, things like that. So as a subcontractor, it's really important that while the councils are de-risking the process, how do you as a subcontractor fit in and find ways into the conversation? This was Sandy for me. When I was running a company that was in the flood mitigation space, we sold physical flood barriers. So we actually went into areas like those affected by Hurricane Sandy, and we worked with city councils and everybody involved to help protect them from the next large major storm event. But it wasn't as easy as just breaking in. There were a whole bunch of things that we had to do to be successful, to break into the conversation. And it was made even harder that we were subcontractors. What we thought, okay, well, why don't we subscribe to RFPs? Let's just respond to every RFP we can. Answer and respond to everything. It sounds smart, right? Well, we tried a tool called Construct Connect that gave us a full visibility of every RFP in the construction space across the US. This was fantastic. There was some really rich detail that we got. We knew about every deal that was happening. The problem is that every time we walked into a deal, it was pretty much already lost for us. The reason being is that most of the deals were going to primes, so prime contractors. So instead of hiring a direct barrier supplier, the RFP would be to the flood mitigation contractor that would hire suppliers like us after they've already been awarded. So while it was good information, it gave us some good information on timing and decision makers and, the full specifications of what they needed. It didn't really position us to be any better than any of the other 15 suppliers in the local regions that we were selling into. So we thought, well, why don't we build a network to all of the suppliers? The prime contractors. Well, we had lists of them. We had multiple lists of them in this Construct Connect tool. And it was fantastic. Once again, we knew exactly what projects they were bidding on, what they were successful in, what they weren't successful in. We knew what regions they were in. This was all really good information, and we knew exactly who we needed to network with. The problem is, and we were on some short lists, so our work was good, and it was effective in the areas we could actually cover, but we actually missed a lot. So we still weren't there all the time when we needed to be to have full coverage of the market. Something had to change. This go-to-market strategy just wasn't working for us. What we did then is we took this rich data that we had and we moved backwards. We looked at council minutes. We looked at signals that we could track that we mapped from about exactly when the RFP was launched all the way back into an area where we thought we could make the most impact. And that was when they were going out into the market trying to learn information and get some semblance of a solution that they needed for this particular problem. Now, I'm going to take a step back. If you know anything about Hurricane Sandy, that was an epic, world-breaking storm. There are some things you just can't do. But the things you can do something about, where I fit in, remember my little space was in flood, where it was not just the hurricane that was the problem. It was also the devastating floods that happened after, where streets were just full of water. Now, those were things they were planning on. Those were things they knew they could prepare for. And in that case, we were able to actually get in and do some amazing things by presenting to city councils of several of the affected regions in Philadelphia, New Jersey, and so on and so forth. And we presented at a time where we knew city councils were just starting to talk about the problem of flood mitigation, the problems that were related to storms like Sandy. And they were thirsty for information. Not only did the city councils want to know what was going on, but also the constituents that attended these city council meetings, they all wanted to know. And a lot of times, this was business owners, this was real estate investors, things I mentioned earlier. And the whole community wanted to fix this. The whole community wanted a solution. So when we came knocking on their door in that phase, when they started asking questions in their board agendas, in their council notes, that things that they were going to vote on, we were lucky to be there with intelligent information backed by 4,000 plus projects across the world, case studies that proved how we could fix for devastating floods of up to 15 feet and beyond with very reliable protection that was crushing it in Europe, Asia, even Canada and other markets around the world. So it was very well received. We got there right at the time when they absolutely didn't know the path forward. They had some ideas, they needed help, and we helped them along. So you can imagine how many more shortlists we were on after that. In fact, the company itself, in just 5 months after adopting this and similar strategies within the company, we were able to double revenue. So 200% year-over-year revenue growth in just 5 months. It was incredible. Now, taking that same playbook here at Signals, SOS Signals, we're doing the same playbook in marine, helping vessel suppliers do this. And in the marine industry, specifically, we look at the paper trail that we try to look for are things like decommissioning. Why is a ferry decommissioned for a specific time? What are fleet plans? What is modernization? There's modernization things where they're upgrading entire fleets, maybe with new vessels or with upgrades to the ones that they have. All of these dry dock schedules as well, where there's a literal plan of the vessels that are going from service, so out of service, put into dry dock for several months in order to get them upgraded and back and fit to service. It's really cool walking through this and seeing that there is a distinct paper trail that is not all the same in marine, that in flood is very mimicked. So the same things we did to identify this paper trail in flood business, it actually applies very well to the marine business and transit and transportation and public infrastructure, public works. And we have seen this, that there is a tried and true process for getting not just the people who can respond to RFPs, so the shipyards who can respond in marine, the transit agency and the operations managers that can respond directly to transit outsourcing projects. We're talking about the sub-trades, the subcontractors that can go into those deals, and they have to sell not only to the agency themselves, but also to the primer contractor that's awarded that RFP. And that's even harder, right? Because it's so much easier to be able to be the prime and to be able to say, okay, yes, I can fix this particular problem for you. I'll take care of the subcontractors myself. When you're the sub, you really have to focus on market timing and conversations that you need to be a part of, really. So you need to de-risk your process. Instead of just focusing on the tried and true networking approach and building those strong relationships, which does work, but you're missing opportunities. Instead, align with your buyer's Sandy. So align with the government agencies and the regulated companies that you work with in those industries where these are giant events, and you can work backwards from those events leading up to them so that you can be right in the proper position to be their invaluable resource, to be the person, to be the company, to be the team that delivers the information they need to de-risk their process in procurement. So before we go today, I just want to ask you one question. If you think really long and hard what your clients are experiencing and the types of Sandy types events that are out there, what is it? What is the main event? What is the thing that's happening in their world every single day or every now and then that is a big catastrophic event that causes massive change in the way they approach a company like yours? Figure this out, and it won't matter if there's a prime or not. You'll be there, you'll be invaluable, and you'll get the contract.